everybody, and welcome to today's video. I am going to be talking about a topic that I find to be rather frustrating today, but it's not going to become any less of a priority in the discourse anytime soon, so I wanted to get some of my own thoughts down on video for future reference. I am talking about game prices. Now look, as a game critic and somebody who spends far too much time with these things, I do know that I have a slightly warped experience, but it is almost impossible to delve into the discourse about games without the cost of them coming up. So for example, Biomutant released this week, and over there on the Twitter thing, I saw people bellyaching more about the cost of the game on the PlayStation Store in comparison to buying it at retail than I saw people talking about the game itself. Meanwhile, many people told me with all the confidence in the world that Shin Megami Tensei 3 HD wasn't worth it because not enough had been done to the remaster, so they would wait for a discount. Nintendo, as yet another example, routinely gets lambasted for re-releasing its older games at full price. You can't even mention that you're looking forward to a game these days without somebody out there saying, yeah, it looks good, but I'll wait for a discount. People are obsessed with the price of these things in the industry, to the point that everything else is of a very secondary concern in talking about games. And frankly, that is not how you should be talking about art at all. Now, with that being said, I do understand that we live in a society that has hit late-stage capitalism, and that is going to ruin us all. Games exist in the same world as that, and games have a price attached to them. Games cost money to make, companies want to make profits, and sometimes too much profit, and far too many people don't have money to splash around in the first place. Finally, unlike some other art forms like ballet or opera or stuff that you find at art galleries, games are mainstream entertainment. And as much as I love those other art forms, they are all far too comfortable with being inaccessible to people who don't have a large discretionary spend. But what I do like about those other art forms is that you can have a conversation about the actual art without having to first wade through the standard conversation about whether that art form is worth it. When I go to the ballet, we end up talking about the quality of the dancing, the themes of the dance, the music, and whatever else. The fact that it costs $100 or whatever for a ticket just doesn't come up. When I go to an art gallery, we don't talk about how much the Monet or Degas or whatever else we're looking at is worth. We have a conversation about impressionism, brushstrokes, or whatever else we see in the painting itself. This is not an academic difference in rhetoric. Because we allow video games to be so overwhelmingly focused on their price value, we allow every capitalistic anti-art discussion point to determine how a game is even made. We've talked about this on the channel in the past, but the reason that game developers and writers undermine the narrative and thematic integrity of their work to put 100 hours of content in there, if not more, is because they want to deliver value for money, and that is the only thing that you can do to get somebody to buy a game these days. Increasingly, in the big end of town, game developers do not even care about what they shove into their games. I'm 100% sure of that. It just doesn't matter as long as it is content, because they know that the gamers aren't going to actually talk about that content. They're going to talk about how much of it is in there and whether there is enough to justify spending money on it. And then there are spoilers. We've also talked about spoilers in the past on this channel, but you walk into a performance of Romeo and Juliet and it's no less of an experience because you know how it's going to end. It remains the weighty, important cultural artifact and work of art because of the thematic meaning of it. Meanwhile, in games, we critics are all hamstrung from being able to talk about something like the Nier remake, because even though it was an old game, and the ending is out there for anybody that wants to go and find it, there were all these spoiler conditions that were attached to it, and our reviews of it. There's nothing in Nier that becomes a lesser experience if you play it, knowing what's going to happen in the game. I know because I've played the remake, I played the original, and I found the remake to be as powerful and thought-provoking as the original, despite having already completed the original and knowing how the game ends, the proper ending no less. There isn't the quality of Nier does not diminish the more times you play it, even if your familiarity with the game increases. But as we've discussed previously on this channel, spoilers are a content-driven, capitalistic thing They're there because the publishers benefit from having people scared to talk about any number of points within the game. And in games, we allow the money side of things, what the publishers want, the capitalistic perspective, to override any interest we may have in talking about the art. Now, of course, a lot of this discourse is also intended in a very positive way. It's not just a negative thing. Games are often talked about as being good value for money, especially when you start talking about sales and whatever. People actually get a perverse enjoyment about talking about how big their backlogs are because they've picked up all this content in bundles and during sales. It's just not a conversation you really have to anywhere near the same extent with any other art form. If you have a bookshelf that's full of books that you've never read, that's almost a point of embarrassment because you've just not experienced all that art. It's not the same as in video games where certainly just having this big backlog is just to be expected. Having all this content is just an expected thing for anybody that plays enough games. But the point here that I'm making is that even though some of this conversation about the capitalist value of games, the cost of games and so on, is intended in a positive way, the discussion still nevertheless shifts the conversation from the artistic quality of games to their commercial value. So this comes back to a question that I ask often enough on this channel, and I know that a lot of people that watch this channel are already on board with it. But anyway, we're going to ask it again. Do you consider games to be art? And if you do, the question then becomes, why do we link the quality of a game to its price and its value for money with such great frequency? Because again, this is the default way that we talk about games. When people ask me for my opinion on a game that I've played, the question is always some variation of, is it worth buying? The question is never, is it worth experiencing? People want to know if the game people want to know if the game will give them an adequate number of hours of joy, not whether the game will be sufficiently thought-provoking, interesting, or engaging to be worth their attention. The money is the issue, not the value for time, not the experience that you get out of it. It's almost the polar opposite of the conversations that I have with people in every other art form. I regularly chat with people about music, live performance, and even film. If you haven't already guessed this from watching this channel, I'm deeply involved with the arts, and it's not just video games. I love pretty much every form of art. And even when it comes to Hollywood films, which are actively trying to ruin the artistic credibility of that medium in favor of box office receipts, even there, people don't default to the cost of watching the film as the first point of discussion to anywhere near the same frequency. It does happen a little bit these days, especially now that we've got streaming services and companies like Disney are trying some nasty things on, like Disney's trying to sell you early access to its films on streaming services for a premium. There is a little bit of that discussion starting to happen, but for the most part, people don't question the value of going to the cinema. They'll buy their movie ticket, they'll sit down, they'll eat it. Maybe they'll eat their popcorn while watching a movie. Maybe at some point the escalating cost of going to the cinema does become a point of discussion. But when they're talking about a film, they're talking about the film. They're not talking about the cost the cost to get access to that film. So quite a while ago, I made the decision at DDNet that we wouldn't do best deal articles or highlight sales or discounts or bundles or whatever. God knows we get enough PR emails about them. It fill my inbox every day. But I know, and I also know that from conversations and past experience, they're actually a great traffic driver. If I did them, I would get a lot more traffic to DDNet. So, and it's not that I'm not sympathetic to the cost of games as well, because I know that a lot of people out there enjoy games, but for them, they're an expensive luxury. And in an ideal world, I would see all the arts broken away from capitalism and treated as a human right rather than a luxury. To me, the arts are an educational thing. They have an educational role in society. In fact, my view on art is its first and foremost role in society is as education. That's how it was way back with cave paintings and narrative stories from tribal peoples and all that kind of early stage art. That was all there just to convey stories and wisdom and truth to the next generation. We're losing that in a sense because we're now starting to lock people out of being able to experience art depending on their economic conditions. So I would like to see arts separated from capitalism and video games are a part of that. But I also firmly believe that for games to develop as an art form, we need to shift away from the conversations about them based on their product value. It's why you'll see me very rarely mention value for money in my reviews and things. I just don't believe that actually helps the art form move forwards. So anyway, that's enough of this video. Do let me know your own thoughts in the comments. I know that this video kind of retreaded a bit of what I've talked about in the past, but it just comes up all the time, and I wanted to have a video specifically based on this topic that I can point to in the future for why I just don't like the conversation about price in video games. I understand why it is important for a lot of people, but at the same time, I would like for those people to also understand why it's important that we can talk about games independent of their price. So anyway, click that like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and you will get all the other videos as I do them, as I upload them. Sorry that you're hearing a bit of car in the background where I'm recording this. There's somebody hooning around on the road outside. But yeah, please do click that like and subscribe button. And if you enjoy my videos, please consider backing me on Patreon. You can do so for just $1 a month. And in doing so, you will get access to not only, well, you get access to the videos anyway, they're free, but you're also supporting the stuff that we do on digitallydownloaded.net. And you also get access to a monthly magazine, which I think is a really nice effort from my part. I put a lot of effort into this monthly magazine. It is a subscriber-only thing, and it's a 48-page monthly about various artistic topics. All right, so thank you very much as always for tuning in. We will see you at the next video.